The living room was quiet, bathed in the soft golden light of the late afternoon sun streaming through the window. Family photos lined the walls, silent reminders of happier times. Liam sat in his wheelchair by the window, his small frame slouched, his gaze fixed on the world outside, a world that now felt impossibly far away. He barely moved, his fingers lightly gripping the edge of the chair, as though holding on to some invisible thread of connection to a life he once knew. Jack watched from the doorway, his heart heavy with the weight of helplessness. The boy who used to race through the park, his laughter ringing like music, was now a shadow of himself, silent and withdrawn. Late at night, when the house was still, Jack would sit at the kitchen table with his head in his hands, the dim glow of the lamp above casting long shadows. He had tried everything, stories, games, even building model airplanes together, but nothing could spark the light in Liam's eyes. Jack's determination grew as his frustration mounted. He couldn't let his son slip away like this. Then one night, while scrolling through his phone in search of ideas, he stumbled upon an article about the incredible bond between dogs and children. A thought sparked, simple yet full of promise. A dog, a companion who could bring warmth, comfort, and a sense of purpose back into Liam's life. Jack sat up straighter, his fingers typing, "Local animal shelters near me." He didn't know it then, but this single decision would set off a chain of events that would change their lives forever. The shelter was bustling with the sounds of barking dogs and the occasional meow of a cat. Jack stepped inside, his eyes scanning the rows of kennels filled with wagging tails and hopeful faces. He had imagined bringing home a young, energetic puppy, something lively that could instantly lift Liam's spirits. A cheerful volunteer approached, guiding him toward a pen filled with playful, bouncing pups. But as Jack moved through the rows, something caught his attention. A quiet dog sitting at the far end of the shelter, away from the commotion. The dog was a scruffy, older German Shepherd mix with patches of gray around his muzzle. His eyes, deep and soulful, met Jack's with a calm intensity. Unlike the other dogs who barked and wagged furiously, this one simply sat, watching. Jack paused. There was something about him, an air of quiet resilience, as though he had stories to tell but no one to hear them. The volunteer noticed Jack's gaze and hesitated. "That's Max," she said softly. "He's a little older and, well, not as easy to place. Most people prefer younger dogs." Jack stepped closer to the kennel, crouching to meet Max's eyes. The dog didn't move, but his tail gave a slow, hopeful wag. "What's his story?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The volunteer sighed. "He was abandoned a while back. We don't know much, but he's been here for months. He's gentle, though. A good dog, just overlooked." Jack stood, torn between the expectation of adopting a puppy and the pull he felt toward Max. He glanced back at the lively pups, their playful antics tugging at his initial idea of what Liam might need. But his gaze returned to Max, who was now standing. His ears perked slightly, as if sensing the weight of Jack's decision. Jack nodded, his mind made up. "I'll take him." The volunteer blinked, surprised. "Are you sure? I'm sure," Jack interrupted, his tone firm but kind. He looked at Max, who now stood at the kennel door, tail wagging in earnest. "I think he deserves a second chance." As the paperwork was signed and Max was brought out, he walked beside Jack, his head held high, as though he understood the gravity of what was happening. Jack glanced down at him, a small smile forming. "Let's go home, buddy," he murmured. Neither of them could have guessed the extraordinary journey they were about to begin. When Jack brought Max home, Liam was seated by the window, his gaze distant as usual. Jack walked in slowly, the sound of Max's paws tapping softly against the hardwood floor. "Liam," Jack called gently, "I've got someone here who wants to meet you." Liam turned his head slightly, his eyes landing on the scruffy dog at his father's side. Max stood still, his tail wagging in slow, cautious movements, as if waiting for permission to approach. Liam frowned, his voice barely audible. A dog? Jack nodded, crouching next to Max. This is Max. He's going to stay with us now. Liam hesitated, his hands gripping the armrests of his wheelchair. Jack gently encouraged Max forward, and the dog padded over, stopping just short of Liam's feet. Max tilted his head, his soulful eyes meeting Liam's. Slowly, he sat down, his tail thumping lightly against the floor. For a moment, neither boy nor dog moved. Then, tentatively, Liam reached out a hand. Max leaned in, his wet nose brushing against Liam's fingers before resting his head on the boy's lap. A flicker of something, curiosity, maybe even a hint of a smile, passed over Liam's face. Over the next few days, Max seemed to understand Liam in a way no one else could. When Liam grew frustrated, struggling to reach something or navigating a difficult moment, Max was there, his calm presence grounding him. One evening, as Liam sat silently by the window, Max nudged a toy toward him, dropping it at his feet with a hopeful wag of his tail. Liam blinked, caught off guard. Slowly, he picked it up, and for the first time in weeks, Jack heard his son laugh, a soft, quiet sound, but laughter nonetheless. As time passed, the bond between Liam and Max deepened. Liam would talk to Max in whispers, sharing thoughts he wouldn't voice to anyone else. Max listened, his eyes never leaving the boy, as though every word mattered. And then, there were the small miracles. Max seemed to know when Liam needed him most. He would lay his head on Liam's lap during moments of sadness or bark softly to alert Jack if Liam needed help. One afternoon, Jack walked into the living room to find Liam attempting to brush Max's fur. It was a clumsy effort, but Max sat patiently, his tail wagging as Liam worked. Jack stood in the doorway, his heart swelling as he watched the two of them together. Max wasn't just a pet. He was becoming a lifeline. Little did they know, Max's unique abilities were more than just intuition. The dog was about to prove himself in ways that would leave them all in awe. It was a stormy evening, the kind where the wind howled through the trees and rain battered against the windows. Jack was in the kitchen preparing dinner, while Liam sat in the living room, absent-mindedly spinning the wheels of his chair. Max lay nearby, his ears occasionally twitching at the sound of the thunder. The house felt cozy despite the storm, but in a split second, everything changed. Liam decided to move closer to the window to watch the rain. As he turned his chair, one of the wheels caught on the edge of the rug, jerking it slightly. The force was enough to push the chair toward the open front door, which Jack had propped ajar to let in some fresh air earlier. The slope of the porch led directly to a steep hill outside, slick with rain and mud. Jack didn't notice at first, his back turned as he stirred a pot on the stove. But Max did. The dog's head shot up, his ears alert as he saw Liam's wheelchair inching toward the door. Without hesitation, Max sprang to his feet and bolted across the room. Liam barely had time to call out before the front wheel of his chair tipped over the threshold. But before gravity could take hold, Max lunged, planting himself firmly in front of the chair and bracing against it with his body. The wheelchair halted, its forward motion stopped by Max's strength and quick reaction. "Dad!" Liam's voice was panicked, cutting through the sound of the storm. Jack turned, his heart dropping as he saw what was happening. In seconds, he was at the door, pulling Liam's chair back inside. Breathing heavily, he crouched down and hugged his son tightly. "Are you okay?" Jack asked, his voice trembling. Liam nodded, his wide eyes shifting to Max, who was now sitting, panting slightly but otherwise calm. Jack turned to the dog, his voice filled with emotion. "You saved him, Max." As Jack held Liam close, their neighbor, Mr. Grayson, approached the porch, having seen the commotion from across the street. His umbrella barely shielded him from the rain as he waved and called out, "Everyone all right over here?" Jack nodded and explained what had happened, his voice still shaky. Mr. Grayson stared at Max, a look of recognition dawning on his face. "That dog," he said slowly, "looks familiar. I think I've seen him before." Jack frowned. "What do you mean?" Mr. Grayson stepped closer, lowering his umbrella. I used to volunteer with a service dog training program. That dog, he looks like one of ours. If it's the same one, he was trained to assist people with disabilities. Jack looked at Max in astonishment. The dog, still sitting calmly by Liam's side, seemed to glance up knowingly, as if he understood the conversation. You're saying Max was a service dog? It's possible, Mr. Grayson replied. They're trained to react exactly like this, to step in when someone's in danger. But if it's him, he must have been retired or something happened. Jack knelt down, scratching behind Max's ears. You're full of surprises, aren't you, buddy? He murmured. Max responded with a gentle wag of his tail, his eyes fixed on Liam. That night, as the storm subsided, Jack couldn't stop thinking about what Mr. Grayson had said. Max wasn't just a rescue dog, he was something extraordinary. And in the days to come, his true abilities would continue to unfold in ways none of them could have anticipated. The morning light streamed through the windows as Jack stood in the backyard, watching Liam and Max together. Ever since the storm, the bond between the two had deepened. But after the revelation about Max's possible past as a service dog, Jack decided to take things a step further. He enrolled Max in a refresher course for service dogs, hoping to unlock more of the dog's potential. The training sessions were challenging, but rewarding. Jack, Liam, and Max worked together every day, learning commands and practicing routines. Max's intelligence and discipline were undeniable. He quickly reacquainted himself with tasks like retrieving items, pushing buttons, and even pulling Liam's wheelchair short distances when needed. Liam, for his part, began to take an active role in the training, his confidence growing with every new skill Max mastered. One afternoon, as the three practiced in the park, a breakthrough moment occurred. Liam dropped his water bottle, which rolled slightly out of reach. Without hesitation, Max trotted over, picked it up gently with his mouth, and placed it in Liam's lap. The look of surprise and pride on Liam's face was unmistakable. "Good boy, Max," he said, laughing as he patted the dog's head. It was a sound Jack hadn't heard in months, a laugh full of genuine happiness. Days turned into weeks, and Max became more than just a companion. He became an extension of Liam's independence. At home, Max would open doors using specially designed levers, fetch Liam's favorite blanket, or alert Jack when Liam needed assistance. Out in public, people began to notice the unique partnership between the boy and his dog. Strangers would stop to admire Max, amazed by his attentiveness and calm demeanor. But it wasn't just about the physical tasks. Max had a way of sensing Liam's emotions, offering comfort in moments of doubt or frustration. One evening, after a particularly tough day at therapy, Liam sat quietly in his room, tears threatening to spill. Max patted in silently, resting his head on Liam's lap. The boy stroked his fur, his breathing slowing as he whispered, "Thanks, Max. You always know." Jack watched these moments unfold, his heart swelling with gratitude. He had adopted Max thinking he could help Liam, but in truth, Max had given their family something far greater: hope, resilience, and the belief that anything was possible. The transformation in Liam was undeniable. He began to take more interest in activities he once loved, like drawing and exploring the outdoors, all with Max by his side. Together, they became a team, inspiring not just Jack but everyone who met them. And while Jack knew Max's training was remarkable, it was the dog's unwavering love and loyalty that truly made him extraordinary. It was a sunny afternoon, and the local park was alive with the sounds of children playing, birds chirping, and families enjoying their weekend. Jack, Liam, and Max were there too, soaking in the warmth of the day. Liam sat in his wheelchair near a small picnic area, Max by his side, always attentive. Jack had stepped away briefly to chat with a neighbor, trusting Max to stay close to Liam. Nearby, a group of children was playing tag near the edge of the park where a shallow stream ran. Among them was a young boy, probably no older than 6, who had wandered a little too far from the group. Jack glanced over just in time to see the boy trip and tumble forward, sliding dangerously close to the water's edge. Before Jack could react, Max was already moving. His ears perked, his muscles tensed, and he bolted across the grass with the speed and precision of a trained rescuer. In mere seconds, Max reached the boy, grabbing the back of his jacket gently but firmly with his teeth. With a controlled pull, Max dragged the child away from the slippery bank and to solid ground. The commotion caught everyone's attention. Parents rushed over, gasping as they realized what had just happened. The boy's mother fell to her knees, scooping him up and holding him tightly. Tears streamed down her face as she turned to Max, who stood calmly, his tail wagging slightly. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Thank you so much." By now, a small crowd had gathered, murmuring in amazement. Jack hurried over to Max, kneeling beside him and giving him an affectionate pat. "You're incredible, buddy," he said, his voice filled with pride. Liam, watching from his wheelchair, beamed with pride. "That's my Max," he said loudly, drawing smiles from the crowd. Someone in the crowd asked about Max, prompting Jack to share their story. He spoke about how Max had come into their lives, how he had saved Liam, and how he had brought hope and joy back to their family. As Jack spoke, people listened intently, their expressions a mix of admiration and emotion. A local reporter, who happened to be at the park covering a community event, approached Jack after hearing the story. "Would you mind if I wrote about this?" she asked, gesturing toward Max. Jack nodded, smiling. "If it helps others see what rescue dogs like Max are capable of, absolutely." That day, Max became a hero not just to Liam, but to everyone who witnessed his bravery. As the sun began to set, Jack wheeled Liam home, Max trotting faithfully by their side. The little boy he had saved waved goodbye, his family still thanking Jack and Liam as they left the park. For Jack and Liam, it was just another reminder of how extraordinary Max truly was, not just as a dog, but as a part of their family. And for everyone else, it was a story they wouldn't soon forget. The days following Max's heroic act at the park were a whirlwind of attention. The local newspaper ran a heartfelt article about Max, detailing his life as a rescue dog turned service companion and his extraordinary instincts that had saved a young boy. The story quickly gained traction, spreading on social media with headlines praising Max's bravery and loyalty. Messages from people all over the community poured in, commending Jack for adopting Max and sharing their own stories of animals who had changed their lives. One morning, Jack was sipping his coffee when his phone buzzed. It was a call from a well-known animal advocacy organization. They had heard about Max and wanted to feature him in their upcoming campaign, highlighting the importance of adopting rescue animals. Jack listened, surprised, but thrilled. "Of course," he said, glancing at Max, who was sprawled out on the floor beside Liam's wheelchair. "He deserves to be recognized." A few days later, a small film crew arrived at their home. Liam was initially shy, but the presence of Max by his side gave him confidence. The crew captured footage of Max and Liam's daily routines, Max helping Liam pick up objects, nudging open doors, and sitting patiently as Liam read aloud to him. They also filmed Jack sharing their story, his voice filled with emotion as he spoke about how Max had transformed their lives. As the campaign launched, Max's story reached an even wider audience. Emails and letters began arriving from families inspired by his journey. Some shared how they had been hesitant to adopt an older dog, but were now considering it after hearing about Max. Others spoke about how animals had helped them through their own struggles. Jack read each message to Liam, who listened with a sense of pride he hadn't felt in a long time. One letter in particular stood out. It was from a man who worked with a national service dog organization. He wrote about how Max's story had not only inspired him, but also reminded him of a dog he had trained years ago, a dog with striking similarities to Max. The man offered to visit and meet Max in person, eager to confirm whether this was the same dog he had once worked with. When the man arrived, he knelt down and called Max by a name Jack hadn't heard before. "Buddy," he said softly. Max's ears perked up, and he wagged his tail, stepping forward to greet the man with unmistakable familiarity. Tears filled the man's eyes as he recounted the training and dedication that had gone into preparing Max for service, only to lose track of him after unforeseen circumstances led to his retirement. For Jack and Liam, the confirmation was bittersweet. Max's journey had been difficult, but it had ultimately brought him to them, where he was not just a helper, but a family member. The man smiled through his tears. He was special then, and he's even more special now, he said. As the campaign continued to shine a spotlight on rescue animals, Jack and Liam felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Max's story was no longer just theirs. It was a beacon of hope for countless others. And as Liam leaned down to scratch Max behind the ears one evening, he whispered, "You're our hero, Max." Max responded with a gentle wag of his tail, as if he understood every word. The house was lively with the hum of conversation as friends, neighbors, and even a few strangers gathered in the living room, all there to celebrate Max. It had been a few weeks since the campaign had launched, and Max's story had touched countless hearts. Jack had decided to host a small event in honor of Max, a way to thank the community for their support and to raise awareness about adopting rescue animals. Liam sat in his wheelchair at the center of the room, with Max lying comfortably at his side, soaking in the attention. People came up one by one to meet Max, sharing their admiration for the dog's bravery and resilience. Liam, who had grown more confident since Max became part of his life, greeted everyone with a smile, proudly telling them stories of Max's daily heroics. A representative from the local animal shelter where Jack had adopted Max stood to speak. "Max's story is a testament to the incredible potential of rescue animals," she began, her voice filled with emotion. "Every year, countless dogs like Max are overlooked because of their age or history. But as we've all seen, these animals have so much love and loyalty to give. Max found the perfect family, and in turn, he's shown us the true meaning of second chances." The room erupted in applause, and Jack took a moment to step forward. With Liam and Max by his side, he shared his heartfelt thanks. "When I adopted Max, I thought I was just bringing home a companion for my son. I had no idea he would become a hero, a friend, and a source of hope for so many people. Max reminded us that even in the toughest times, there's always room for love, trust, and new beginnings." As Jack spoke, Liam reached down to scratch Max's head, a small but meaningful gesture. It was clear that Max had done more than just help Liam. He had transformed their entire family. The atmosphere in the room was warm and celebratory, but it also carried a sense of purpose. Inspired by Max's story, several attendees pledged to visit the shelter and consider adopting a rescue animal of their own. Toward the end of the evening, a young girl approached Liam and Max. She held a crayon drawing of a dog that looked just like Max, with big, bright eyes and a wagging tail. "I drew this for Max," she said shyly. Liam grinned, taking the picture and holding it up for everyone to see. "Max loves it," he said confidently. The party eventually wound down, and as the last guests said their goodbyes, Jack looked around the now quiet living room. Liam was already asleep in his wheelchair, his hand resting gently on Max's back. Max lay still, his eyes half closed, as though he understood the significance of the evening. Jack knelt beside them, his voice soft. "You've done so much for us, Max, more than we could have ever imagined." Max lifted his head slightly, his tail thumping against the floor in response. In that moment, Jack knew that Max's journey, from a shelter dog to a family hero, wasn't just a story of rescue. It was a story of redemption, love, and the unbreakable bond between a boy and his dog. And as Jack turned off the lights and carried Liam to bed, Max followed faithfully, his place in their family forever secure.